I'm Serena Farb, one of the co-founders of the Vegan Earth Day March, and we are so excited to have you here today. And looks like a lot of you are already organizers who I've been working with. But for those of you who don't know, we're planning an International Day of Action on Earth Day, April 22nd, this year in about 6 months, or 6 weeks, sorry. And the goal is to call for the plant-based treaty, a plant-based food system transformation, and for individuals to go vegan, because there has not been enough attention on climate, on food systems within climate and environmental issues, and we really need that to be part of the solution. And Earth Day is really the perfect time to bring this in and connect these issues. So we have, more than 30 cities now, I think, that are planning events, and those range from full-on marches either in the streets or sidewalks to rallies and outreach events and things like food distribution or seed distributions as well. So what we're going to be talking about today, and I'll hand it over to Chelsea in a minute, is really how to promote your event. In particular, right now we're at about the 6-week mark, so how to send out a press release in advance to try and get some media attention or media spots for your local event. We are working on press releases to kind of promote the entire international campaign and, the whole global mission of the Vegan Earth Day March. But then you as, organizers in your cities will be able to reach out more to local media channels to get coverage for your specific event. So Chelsea.
In addition to that, we're also going to be talking about general outreach today, a little bit of social media tips. And then if you have any questions in general at the end, you'll be able to chat with us about those. A little bit more about me. My name's Chelsea Davis. I'm out of Portland, Oregon. I run Veggies Do It Better. So I am the co-organizer, co-founder of the March, along with Serena of Born Vegan. And we are in partnership with Animal Save, Climate Save, Plant-Based Treaty, Climate Healers, and Unchained TV. And then we're also fiscally sponsored by A Well-Fed World. So we have a lot of wonderful groups that are supporting this, a lot of wonderful organizers, as Serena said, around the world. We're really excited with how this is becoming such a big day of action worldwide, and we're looking for even more people to join. So if you are interested, we're going to be putting some more stuff in the chat as we go. Also want to mention that we just launched our GoFundMe, and we have a $20,000 matching grant. So if anybody is interested in supporting the March, that would be a wonderful way to do it. In addition, you can also be a sponsor. And so I'll be sharing our sponsorship packet in the chat a little bit later on as well. But right now I want to introduce James. James O'Toole is the Director of Communications for Animal Safe Movement and Plant-Based Treaty. He handles media relations and petitions, creates the Animal Safe Movement newsletter, develops global reports. He became vegan in 2010 and an activist in 2014 after bearing witness at the Toronto Cow Save Vigil. Connecting with a cow arriving for slaughter was a transformational event, and animal rights soon became his full-time focus. Previously, James worked in the finance industry as a stockbroker and wrote market commentary. Thank you so much for joining us, James.
Thanks so much. Thanks for that introduction and for the nice messages in the chat as well from familiar faces, and welcome to everyone new as well that I've not met before. So I've got a presentation that I will share, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions at the end. So let me just try and hopefully this works. Share screen and get the presentation up. Okay, so there I am with my dog Holly there. Okay, so let's start. So yeah, this is a lot of this will be very, very basic to people, but it's worth kind of reminding ourselves because sometimes the most basic things we kind of overlook. So it's very key to know your audience and what you're trying to achieve from a press release. As activists, we're very used to doing kind of outreach and activism, trying to get people to go vegan. This is this is not what we're doing here. This is trying to get the attention of media, of news organizations. Most of the people that we're going to be contacting with the press release are not going to be vegan. A lot of them are not going to be pro-animal rights. So the purpose of the communication is not activism as such. It's not to try and get them to go vegan. It's to try and get them to cover our event. So that's the action that we want the people to take, that we're communicating with, is to turn up to cover the event, not to kind of convert them. This is also very, very key. Always tell the truth. If we put things in press releases that aren't true, whilst we might think it sounds better, that's going to be very easily picked apart. Like I said, most of the people that we're communicating with are not going to be pro-animal rights. So they will be looking for ways to discredit us. I mean, hopefully not, but some of them will be. And if we put things in press releases that aren't completely factual, they will pick up on that. So yeah, we're here to educate them on an event that's happening. We're not here to promote veganism or climate justice. Focus on the issue at hand, which is trying to get them to cover what we're communicating them about. Now, most journalists, certainly ones that I know, are very busy and sometimes a bit lazy as well. So if we make it difficult for them, they're just going to not bother turning up or covering the event. So we want to make it really easy for them to cover the event, easy for them to show up. That means including straight away the media contact. So you don't want to make it difficult for them to communicate with us, to find out more information. If they want to find out more information, that's got to be really easy for them to do. Email, phone, and also, which is a lot of the things I'm talking about now, we've learned from mistakes. Because when we were doing this, when I first started doing press releases for Toronto Pig Save back in, I think, 2015, a couple of times we'd send out press releases and the organizers who were attending the event would put their own contact details on. So then what would happen is the press would try and call them or email them during an event, and they wouldn't, the phone would be on silent or in their pocket, whatever, they wouldn't see it. So we missed those opportunities. So you want to make sure that the media contacts are people who are available. So what we'll do is we will have, usually one of the media contacts won't even be at the event. Often these days, that's myself. I'm currently in Manchester, England. When I lived in Toronto, I would attend all the events, but less so these days. So I'm often a media contact because I'm going to be at the computer. And then I'm going to be able to give them the information they need to make it really easy for them to cover the story. So that's a key point there, someone who's going to be available. And then you also want someone who is at the event as well, but they need to be aware that they need to check the phone, and they need to be ready to step away from the event to like take an interview or whatever it might be. So yeah, people just need to be made aware of that. And again, like it's these are basic things, but they're also things that are easy to forget. Media files. So in the press release, what we'll often do, or what we always do, we'll provide a Google link to a folder in a drive, which contains photos and videos of the event. And people who are at the event, we will ask them to, if they take a good photo or a good video, to upload it into that file live. So when the journalists are looking at the press release, if they click on that link, they'll see live real-time photos, videos. Obviously, prior to the event, you'll have photos from other events or other relevant content, again, to make it really easy for them to cover the event. You don't want them having to try and like Google marches or whatever to try and like find some stock footage. You want to make it really easy for them. And again, another one that in the past we learned from these mistakes: event details, time, place. Obviously, you want to be that needs to be front and center of the press release, preferably right under the title of it, so they know exactly when this is going to take place. They really like quotes, so always include a quote. Like I was saying, sometimes they're very overworked. You want to make it really easy for them. If you provide a quote, that's going to be 2 or 3 sentences, 2 or 3 lines in their article that makes it that they don't have to write themselves, makes it really easy for them. So always include a quote from a key person who's going to be at the event or one of the organizers. And then at the end of the press release, some background information. They may not have heard of the organization. They may not have heard of Animal Safe Movement, Plant-Based Treaty, Vegan Earth Day March. So you want to tell them a little bit about who we are, what we're about, what our demands are, but in a succinct way. You know, that if it's really long, that they're not gonna read it. So you want to try and make it like 1 to 2 pages, the whole thing, 1 to 2 pages total. So yeah, so the goal of it is that they open this email and everything they need to cover the event is right there for them, and it's really easy for them to do that. So here's an example of a press release that we sent out last year, and you can see the things I'm talking about are there. So we've got the title, then we've got straight away the media contacts. We've got, so that's Anita Krantz and Nicola Harris. Nicola Harris is also Director of Communications alongside myself with Plant-Based Treaty and Animal Safe Movement, and Anita is the Executive Director of Animal Safe Movement. And there's the link to the media files, the event details, like I was saying, straight front and center of the press release. And sometimes like the temptation is to get straight to the information and then have the event details lower down. But from a journalist perspective, they want to see that information front and center. So that's that. So finding the media outlets contacts. So there are several different ways of doing that. There are media lists that you can buy. There are websites like Rocket Reach and Muckrack that have lists of journalists that you can sort through. Rocket Reach, I think, has a free trial actually, so you can always just sign up and use that to try and like get some contacts without having to pay for it. But most journalists these days have Twitter accounts, so that's another good way of finding who it is. So yeah, I mean, Google basically is a great source of information for finding out that kind of stuff. But it's the more relevant the contact, the more likely it is they're going to cover the story. So if you're sending a press release about a climate march to a food journalist, they're probably not going to cover it. So it's not like just send out to as many people as possible. The type of journalist, the type of stories they cover is very relevant. So trying to find out that information before you send them out is key. But you can also, like there at the bottom, send to the general emails as well. So just to increase your chances that it's going to get picked up. Yeah, so calling, question mark there. So this is, some people think calling isn't a good idea. Some people think it is a good idea. I think it's a good idea if you have the specific contacts that you know who you're going to, you're speaking to the right people. And if what you're calling about, you know, it's going to be relevant to them. So it's a case of, if they knew what I'm about to tell them, they would definitely turn up and cover the event. If it's just a generic, like, so for example, with Toronto Pig Save, we held vigils every week, and we think that they are newsworthy, right? I mean, animals are going to the slaughterhouse getting killed. It's very unjust. we think that should be front and center of the news. But the reality is the news organizations don't think that. So if you're going to call them up and just say, oh, there's a vigil happening tomorrow, that's probably not a good use of time. And also it could actually even damage the relationship with that journalist if they think you're wasting their time. However, if you have a celebrity turning up tomorrow at your vigil, if an animal's been rescued at the vigil, if something of specific news worthiness to them is going to be happening, then it's worth, I think, calling and letting them know that information. Which leads on to getting them to show up. Like you're saying, send it to the right people. So you don't want to be sending it to food journalists if it's about the climate. Explain the visuals, so explain what it is that they're going to see when they get there, and frame it in a way that is, think about it like if you're reading a newspaper or you're watching a news segment on TV. What are the things that is going to get attention? It has to be dramatic. It has to be so. For example, sometimes at a vigil in Toronto, we would have, if we had like guests attending, we had up to like 400 people on one occasion attend a vigil. Now that was, that was definitely newsworthy, and we did actually get the media showing up to cover that. So when when we called them, explained it to them, say, look, there's 400 people. It's a massive event. Like there's going to be great footage for you. So you have to really try to sell it to them to make it worth their while. Because unfortunately, the reality is that the default position they're going to have is, oh, this isn't worth covering. And I think even if that sounds a bit negative, if you go into it with that mindset and it's your job to convince them to cover it, I think that's probably going to get the best results. So it's just a little bit of humor there, so kind of explaining what the issue is that we're dealing with. They're not interested. They're not interested. So we need to give them something that they're going to be interested in, and that's like something out of the ordinary. Now this, don't rely on the media, but also this fits with media as well. A lot of times on TV, on news coverage, it will be just kind of regular people, not journalists, who have got the good footage, especially these days. So have someone at the event dedicated to creating content. Now, and that's easy said and done, because like if a lot of people will volunteer, oh yeah, I can take footage, I'll do it. But then when it comes to it, they they're too involved in the march, that their focus isn't, or might be on outreach, or that the focus isn't on creating the content. So it's good to have someone dedicated to creating content, and that way that could provide good footage that we can present to the media, and also obviously it provides good footage for us for social media content that hopefully can go viral. So it's really important to be our own journalists and tell our own story, and have someone dedicated, or more than one person dedicated, to creating good quality content. And we do that at all our events. Have someone there who's very comfortable with speaking to the media, and make them aware that that's going to be their position ahead of time, so they are prepared with talking points. They're comfortable answering questions, and you want to have like a dedicated person. So because if someone who talks to media who either isn't prepared, doesn't come across very well, or says the wrong thing, it can actually be damaging for us. So it's really good to ahead of time just make sure you know who it is going to be that speaks to the media if they do show up. And if you are that person, have talking points ready, memorize them, be prepared to know what to say. Give the organization's position, not your opinion. That's key as well. And obviously be respectful and professional, including appearance. I know a lot of you here will be familiar with DXE. Whenever they have spokespeople, they have like a jacket on. Sometimes they'll be wearing suits. Now, not everyone likes doing that, but be aware that that's the best practice in talking to the media. The people watching at home, it just comes across as more professional. People take this more seriously, you know, rightly or wrongly. That's just kind of like the situation we're in. So if the more professional the appearance, the better for the spokesperson for the media. Yeah, so a jacket blazer does rightly or wrongly conveys expertise, so people take it more seriously. And yeah, some good tips there. Smile at the interview when you're not speaking, and don't move about. People have a tendency to kind of like move about when they're getting interviewed. It's a skill to not do that, but it doesn't look good on camera if you're kind of like moving about. So these are just things that possibly people don't think about, but you know, the idea of sending these press releases is to get attention, to get coverage. So and that's not easy. Like a lot of the times, you know, press releases don't work. You don't get the coverage. So if they do show up, you want to make sure we present in the best possible way. Interview tips. A lot of times they're done on Zoom or something like that these days. So not quite as applicable. But if it isn't on Zoom, a landline, if people still have those, it's more reliable than cell phones, and you get better reception. So if possible, use a landline. And then just some tips there. If you stand up, it makes your voice sound stronger. Yeah, have notes, but if you're just reading your notes, it does come across that that's what you're doing, and it doesn't sound as professional. So try not to do that. Like I've said a few times, the journalists and the news oftentimes are not pro-animal rights, so they might be combative. They might try and catch you out. Don't argue with them. That's what they want. Do not argue, get into like a hostile debate with them. Just keep you cool, be respectful, and just try to stay on the talking points. Don't ask to see the story. They're not going to show you it, and that's not how it's done. You can't really do that. And but yeah, don't sweat it too much. Like, even if it doesn't go well, it's still coverage. It's still getting the message out there. So just, yeah, don't worry about it too much, and just try and do better in the future. It is a developed skill, and you only really get better at it through practice. So the more kind of times you do interviews or presentations, the better you'll get at it. So some pitching tips for the press releases. Obviously, if you can connect it to current trends, that's good. So if I know an IPCC report is coming out in a couple of weeks, so any press releases around that would be good to link to that, because the press media are always trying to link to like current, like really current things that are happening like in the you know, that day or that week. So yeah, make it timely. And yeah, it's worth remembering most non-vegans agree that the way society treats animals is wrong, and that we're in the middle of a climate crisis. So people are on side with the messaging. I think it's just a case of framing it in a positive way. You know, we don't want to be judgmental, don't want to criticize. We just want to provide solutions to these issues. And obviously, going vegan, plant-based diet is the best for people's health, for the animals, for the environment. And so, yeah, just frame it in a very positive way. And same with the communications to the media as well. Yeah, so like I was saying, it's not easy to get media to cover us, and we've kind of improved over the years of getting coverage, but it's still not easy. But when you do get coverage, then you really want to capitalize on it. So that means reposting it, sharing it, getting engagement. If a newspaper has got like well, they all do, like social media sites, and they put it on their Instagram or their Facebook, get everyone you know to comment on it, to like it, to share it, get the algorithms thinking it's a positive story that's newsworthy, and you know, have a system in place for doing that. So everybody knows that what if we do get coverage, then there's going to be like a constant stream of people who are sharing it and helping the traffic on it, and that will impress the editors because what they want to cover things if they think it's newsworthy, if it's going to attract clicks to their website. And so if we can show them that when they do post news stories on climate or vegan, then it does get a lot of coverage, it does get interaction, then that's going to help in the future. It's going to make them more likely to cover us moving forward. So it's really crucial to do that. And obviously, if you see any errors, just shoot them a little email correcting it in a very positive way. Don't be critical. We need them more than they need us. So we just got to remember that and be very, very respectful and polite when communicating with them. It is difficult. A lot of the times you're not going to get coverage, but don't be disheartened. That's just how it is. It's very difficult to get coverage, and just celebrate the wins. And if we don't get coverage for an event, don't be too disheartened and just try again next time. And it will come if we keep persevering. And that's about it. Thanks for listening. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, James. I think there was a question in the chat.
Go ahead.
You need to first vet who you talk to, ensure it's not someone who will twist what you say to work against the cause.
Sorry, how do you combat against that? Is that the question?
I don't know if it's in the chat for you. You could look at the chat and then see it yourself. It might be helpful. I think they're basically asking, like, how do you make sure that the journalists that you're reaching out to aren't going to twist what they're saying in order to work against the overall goal?
Yeah, I don't think you can do that. I mean, there are some journalists who are really going to try and work against us, but I think if we just stick to the facts and be truthful, be honest, then that's they can't really twist that. So I wouldn't worry too much about that.
And then somebody is asking what a great subject line would be when you're sending the press releases. Yeah,
that's a great question. So you want like a hook, but in a not in a clickbaity way. So information about what's happening. So for example, with the vigils, we'd have like if we were having an all-day vigil or celebrity vigil, we would have that definitely in the subject line. So you just want something to grab their attention, basically, but it has to be, you don't want just clickbait that when they click it and then it's clearly not real or really twisting, the event. Then that's going to work against you moving forward. They might fall for that once or twice, then they're going to stop reading your emails. So try and make it as engaging as possible whilst ensuring it's truthful.
And then do you recommend, if you're sending, so for example, if you're sending a press release out 5-6 weeks out to people that are doing podcasts and radios, and if you're trying to get like a radio spot or a news spot in the station the week leading up, I've heard that you want to put in the subject line advance notice as opposed to immediate release. Can you talk on that, and also on timing and the difference between what those press releases would look like and when a media advisory would come in?
Yeah, good questions. It goes back to, I think it was the first or second slide, when like know your audience. So if you're sending it out to a podcaster and you're looking for an interview 6 weeks in advance, that's going to be framed a little bit different to if you're sending it to a live reporter and you want them to come down to the scene because something's happening. So you can include more information in the longer form press release that's going out to like a podcaster. They'll probably take more time to look at it and consider whether they want you on their show. So you do have to adjust the content depending on who you're trying to reach. The journalists who are covering events, you know, they're not looking for a guest for like a 1-hour podcast, or they're not looking to write a big long article. It's going to be like a paragraph or two on a website or in a newspaper, or like a 30-second segment on a news show. So they don't want much information. They want the most dramatic information in the most short form possible. So you do have to adjust it depending on how far out it is, and also the type of journalist or influencer, whoever it might be, you're trying to reach.
Jacinta?
Thanks. Great presentation. Thanks, James. So just wondering, I think I don't know where I've heard it or whatever, but typically what I've done in the past is sent out the press release a day or two before the event, and then even on the day as well, early in the morning. So do you think that's a good idea? Necessary, whatever, and also the phone calls on the day as well. And also, what about doing a follow-up press release? Is that something that's still done? What do you think? What's your opinion on all of that?
Yeah, thanks, Shinsa. Great questions. Yeah, I mean, there is mixed opinion on the frequency of sending them. I think generally what we do that, we'll send one a day or two before, and then we'll send often the same one, or maybe a little bit shorter on the day of the event, in case they haven't seen it. Depending on how often you're sending these out, obviously, the downside of that is that, let's say you have an event every week, and you could get to a situation where they see your email and it goes into their spam folder, or they just don't even open it, right? So you want to be mindful of how often you're communicating with these people. They do get lots of emails. In terms of a press release afterwards, I'd say really the temptation obviously is always, oh, we want this out there, let's email it, let's get it to them. It's unlikely they're going to cover an event after it's happened, unless there was something significant happened at that event. So yes, if you had a vigil and an animal got rescued and it was very dramatic footage, then for sure, 100% send that email with a follow-up, and try and catch them, in the subject line and straight up in the front at the beginning of the press release what happened. But if it's just you had an event and it just went smoothly and they chose not to cover it at the time, the chances of them covering it in the future are very, very slim.
And I just want to jump in here and say, for those of you that are with the city who has filled out our official organizer agreement form for the Vegan Earth Day March, in our resource folder, we have a full press guide that we're kind of suggesting. And the base, line of what we're suggesting is maybe try sending one out about now, like 5 to 6 weeks in advance, if you want to try and get those interview spots or TV spots. And we actually have a sample press release template that we've put together that is now in that folder for you. So you can go in there and it kind of has the base outline of like a suggested title that's pretty applicable to most cities. And then you can just plug in sort of your city name, some local information about your, march or rally or what you're planning. And then we've included some quotes from Chelsea and myself. You can add your own quotes. And then we've also included some information with statistics connecting it to, like, talking about the IPCC report, a new study that literally just came out 3 days ago, talking about how much the temperature will raise just from, animal agriculture. So we have those in there. So, and you can change that out and put other information in, but we've tried to do as much of the work as possible for you in that. So you can kind of copy and paste and plug and play. So we're recommending like doing a 6-week one. And then in our press guide, we're also recommending sending a media alert like the day or two before your event. It really depends on how big of an event you're planning, whether you're planning a big, like a march in your city or an outreach event that's maybe smaller. But if you're planning a big march in particular, and you really want to try and get the media to show up in person and cover your marching, your chanting, any big speakers or big names you might have there. And we have not completed the template for the media alert, but we will have that soon, so that it will be there in time for you to send that out the day or two before. And then we also will have another press release template to send like the day of as well, with, you know, more direct. So that's kind of what we're suggesting for local marches. And then Chelsea and myself will be working on sending out press releases with the facts and sort of covering the whole International Vegan Earth Day March campaign. And Lynn, yes.
Yeah, okay. I've done a lot of publicity in the past, and I've been a spokesperson as well. So in addition to a question that I'm going to have at the end of what I have to say, I wanted to say these things. For the person who's going to be the spokesperson, it's really, really important to learn how to speak in sound bites. Because if you go into a long thing about what we're doing, it's going to be very hard for the person who's the reporter to chop out a piece of that they'll use in their piece that they write or whatever, or they show online. So, you know, I would say just have a few things that you want, really important messages to get across. Say them in a sound bite. Everybody knows what a sound bite is. Also speak slowly. Whether the person is, usually this is for people who are taking hand notes. Sometimes people still come with a pen and pad and they write down what you're saying. So you have to be cognizant of the fact that they can't write shorthand. You have to speak slowly. Yes, it's difficult to get press in large cities, but in small cities, it's extremely easy. I have experience in both those. And I've always gotten press in small towns because there's not much news going on there. So I want to advise people to do these marches in small towns and contact your media there. What I used to do when I would write a press release, and I'm a little confused with the terminology now, advisory press release, you know, whatever. That's a question that I have. Write your press release. I did this so that they can just take your entire press release, not even change a word of it, and stick it right into their publication. No work necessary. Just put the whole, you know, everything that you want to say and the purpose of it, and they'll just put it right in. I've had that happen so many times, even in foreign language newspapers. Yeah, I recognized one of my press releases in Spanish in a foreign paper. So can you please clear up for me? Because for me, years and years ago, a press release was, yeah, you sent it the day before, and also I did the calling the day of. I never did day after, but that's a good idea too. So I'm so confused as to what the difference is between an advisory and a press release. You, Serena, are saying a press release well in advance. I never did a press release well in advance. That was the immediate thing. It seems to me that an advisory would be what you do well in advance, but please straighten me out on this. Now, what is the current day terminology?
So the 6 week in advance press release, it is a press release because it has a lot of information, and it's not just trying to get someone to show up to your event. The way we've written it in our press guide is that a media alert or media advisory has less information. It's not meant to necessarily be printed or as an article. It's to try and get news outlets to show up in person at your event and give them the necessary, date, time, location, basic facts about it. And James, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way we've been using the terminology. The press release is meant to get them to show up in person, or sorry, that was my bad. The media alerts are meant to get them to show up in person. Press releases have more details. They're more about an article. And so then the difference between a 6 week out one and one, the day of, is that the 6 week out one is for the purpose of trying to get an additional like interview or spot on a radio, news show, TV spot, so that prior to your event, you have even more coverage where they're doing like a live in-studio interview with you. So that's why we're recommending, and we'll be doing ourselves, this 6-week out press release, where then the day before the day of press release is, here's the event, here's what's going on, here's what happened, here's the, you know, important information, write an article or print this press release, like cover it.
Okay, but you just said press release for the day before the day of, whereas before you were saying advisory.
So there's some, you know, variation. We recommend sending an advisory like 1 to 2 days before to try, and that's to try and get them to show up in person. And then you can also send the press release either the day before, the day of, that's slightly different than the advisory, but those are both in a similar time frame.
Okay, so the definitions have definitely switched. But okay, I think I'm understanding now. 6 weeks, press release, you're calling it, day before, day of, advisory.
And this is all in the media guide as well. We've restated all of that, said the same thing there. And then before I get to Eloise's question, I did want to comment on what you said at the beginning about sound bites too. That's really important. And again, in our Google Organizer resource folder, we are working, it's not there yet, but we are working on a March messaging guide that not only will include sort of suggested chants and Vegan Earth Day March specific, you know, talking points, but we will be putting some short, we'll have our demands in there that we're, you know, marching for, and we'll have some short sound bites and talking points that will be, and again, you can, you know, sort of put them in your own words, but we'll be trying to help give you as much of that language specific for the Vegan Earth Day March as possible.
Thank you.
And Eloisa.
Thank you, Serena. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that you said. So in reference to having a spokesperson, is really ideal to have more than one person, especially and list them on the press release, because the press moves on very quickly. If they cannot get in touch with that one person to write, you know, an article about the march, they will just move on and not write anything at all. So it's really a good idea to have more than one person listed there as a contact. Beyond that, you know, the press releases obviously is to get media attention, but a lot of people will be seeing this. So you want to be just very succinct and make sure that you keep in mind that the general public may be reading these press releases. And beyond that, to Lynn's point about being succinct and speaking in sound bites, the person who is either the spokesperson and the person to get in contact with has to have a really understanding of what we're talking about. For example, Serena mentioned the IPCC. You have to be able to speak about that in detail, because they will ask questions, whether that's at the march or whether that's when they call you on the phone, like, you know, to write perhaps an article. And it's really important to really know how to relate it back to how it impacts you locally as well. So there's, you know, the global aspect of climate change, especially in New York, since we are so majorly impacted by climate change because of our location. You know, to speak on that, how is it going to impact Manhattan? How is it going to impact New York City? How is climate change impacting New York City right now? I mean, there's so many different projects that are going on just right now in order to supposedly protect ourselves from what's to come. And so I think that those are very important points. That is not just, you know, somebody who is an organizer and able to tell, hey, you know, we're going to have a march on this date at this location, but to really speak on those issues, whether that's on a local scale or a global scale, because that just tends to connect with people, you know, a lot more.
Those are great points. Thank you so much for sharing. I wanted to go back to what Lynn's question was and just clarify a little bit or add a little bit more information about like an advisory versus a press release and who to send that to. So like Serena was talking about, the advisory is meant to be like a hook. So you're just giving them just enough where they're like, oh, this sounds really interesting. I want to come out and physically be there. So that would be a journalist. Whereas you would probably send a press release to like a news station that isn't going to come. Possibly they might send an anchor out, but that doesn't, at least in my town, that doesn't happen very often anymore. Usually they want to do spots like the Friday morning before, or they'll quickly mention it on like these, like the weekend news show. They'll be like, okay, this is happening today. And especially with Earth Day and Earth Month, you can really lean on that and say, this is the big Earth Day event in this city. You should really have some coverage. And then I would love to open it up to James too, if he could add on to trying to simplify what the difference is and who it should go to.
And excuse me, what is the long form one and what is the short form one? Or can you make either one a long form or short one? I am still confused, frankly.
Well, I think Serena explained it really well. The press release is the longer format. The media alert is is the hook, just trying to get them out there. So yeah, like the press release you'd send out more in advance, but you could also send it like a couple of days ahead of time as well. It really depends on who it is you're sending it to and what the ask is. If it's just to get them to come to the event and cover it, the shorter media advisory is probably going to be better fit for that. If you want them to do a big long article on it, they're going to need more information, the longer form press release. And I think Eloise was talking some good points there, which kind of also made me think of another answer to the person who asked about what to do with a difficult journalist who might try and twist things. So if you're not a climate scientist, which I think probably most people who aren't going to be, and the press, you do have like a negative journalist who's trying to catch you out. I think in that situation, it's good to refer back to the IPCC, refer back to the UN Secretary General. So it's like these figures in authority are saying these things, and it just makes them look a bit, it just makes it harder for them to kind of make you sound like that you're wrong. It's like, it was not me saying this is the IPCC saying this is the UN Secretary General, this is President Biden saying this. Are they all wrong as well, kind of thing. So yeah, if they are trying to, if you notice that they're trying to catch you out, they're trying to get to you, I'd take it to, well, this isn't me, this is like reputable scientists, this is world leaders, this is the IPCC who are saying we have this crisis.
Are there any other questions? Eloisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one extra point, and this may be more, I think it's also really important to understand where you're doing the march and how the media may react there, just to James' point. So here we have, a lot of initiatives, and we're really, pushing to be one of the greenest cities. However, our mayor, who is doing a lot of great work, it can also be very polarizing and very problematic. So to James's point, talking about, hey, mention folks and mention the scientists and mention the IPCC, but also make sure that when you mention the folks that you're referencing, that they are not just these extremely polarizing figures that may have the opposite effect of what we're trying to do. And so that may be something that's very particular to New York City, where we may see a pushback because of how polarizing some of our public figures may be. And so that's just something important to keep in mind. So we actually get the coverage that we need. And so things are, really covered from the perspective of what's happening to everyone, whether that's affecting food security, migration, and all of these things, versus focusing on, okay, this is just, another agenda and, pushed forward by, whatever council member or mayor and so on. So I think it's just important to remember who we're quoting beyond scientists and public figure and politician.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And then two things that I'll add to that are, one, it really, really helps the more local and direct I think you can make that connection from what I've seen. So like in our media guide, we have, you know, some suggested connections, like the study that came out 2 days ago. That's not really like local. That's like a generic, you know, more scientists talking about climate change. And things like that. But if you have some direct policy or something going on in your area, like for example, two or 3 years ago, I'm from Kansas City, there were some developers that were trying to expand and put in, well, we both had Tyson trying to put in like a large chicken processing plant pretty much just outside the city. And then also like another like slaughterhouse and factory, you know, large factory farm. And so those really brought the community together with like lots of people from all different backgrounds. Like nobody, minus the large developers, wanted the Tyson chicken processing plant there. And so being able to connect a march or, you know, vegan Earth Day event to something like that, like, hey, there's this thing that like none of us want, you know, like this is related. We don't want, you know, more animal operations like this, and they're bad for the people and they're going to pollute our water, and, you know, all of the related things, how that directly affects your community can be really, really powerful. And that can take some research. Like if you aren't currently directly involved or don't know all of the policies and things going on in your community, like learn, figure out like what is happening local, that you can sort of support with, you know, the work you're doing, or draw a connection, you know, in, you know, like making it local, I think can make a lot more people care and invested versus just like, oh yeah, climate change. Like we all, you know, how is climate change affecting your local community? What is polluting your local community's air and water? And, you know, can we relate that? So wanted to add that in there. And then there's something else I was going to say, but I think I forgot. So if anybody else has any questions.
So Amy had a question. I want to make sure that she got that one answered. She's asking how it's best to acquire new contact info. She's looking at updating her LA Animal Safe list.
So we do in our press, our local press guide that's in the resource folder for organizers who have signed the agreement. We do have like a whole list of bullet points to go through that, but the basics, again, it's research. And I've actually found LinkedIn to be one of the most helpful places. James mentioned Twitter. A lot of journalists are on Twitter, so you can sort of tweet at them directly. But this is both of these ways, and social media, as well as just their websites, are a good way. Like, who is writing stories on climate issues? Who is writing the environmental stories? Who is writing about veganism? And then try and tweet at them or message them directly on LinkedIn. You know, those are some great ways, but it's that research, it's that who is writing the stories that are related to what we're talking about.
And then James, during your presentation, you had mentioned a couple of different places where you could sign up for lists. Could you repeat those?
Rocket Reach and Muckrack, M-U-C-K-R-A-C-K. They're two media lists. They have like you have to, it's a subscription, but then they have like, you can like filter it by like region or even type of journalist, what the coverage, and they'll generate lists that way. But I think LinkedIn is great as well, and the websites. These journalists want to be found, so if you go to their websites, they're usually all listed there with their emails or their Twitter accounts. And with Twitter, I wouldn't worry about, let's say you've emailed a press release, still also tweet at them. I think the more ways you can try and reach them, the better, because there's every chance they won't see the email or they'll just delete it. So if you get their attention via LinkedIn or Twitter as well, so I wouldn't worry about over sending.
Great. I would also add to you that if you're working with other groups, like for example, we have Food and Water Watch, we have a chapter here in Oregon, and they're working on preventing a chicken farm from being built in South Oregon. They probably have a great media list. So when we work with them, we'll ask to leverage their media list. So I would definitely encourage doing that. Another group that tends to have really good media lists is PETA. So if you have a good relationship with your local PETA person, or you could just try and find their communications person and message them and see if they have a media list for your city or your state or your area in general. If you're in an area where like people might be coming from, you know, multiple states, that would be good too. And yeah, I think we're about ready to wrap up. Serena, did you remember the other thing that you were going to say?
Oh, I think I was going to mention the farm bill, which it can be very hard to figure out like exactly what's going on, but the Senate right now is starting to write the 2023 farm bill, which will basically allocate and set policy for where our tax dollars are spent on, you know, food and agriculture and nutrition programs for the next 5 years. So just pay attention to the media. You can follow like Agriculture Fairness Alliance and RAP,
Rancher Advocacy Program.
Rancher Advocacy Program. They're both in DC, like lobbying on that right now. But watch for like news updates on that, any official meetings or any voting or things, because that will be going on. That's not like a one-time set thing. That will be happening in Congress like over the next few months, and there is no date set right now for like when they're voting on that legislation or policy. But that'll be really helpful to follow and potentially connect to the vegan Earth Day March as well, especially since, you know, one of our 3 demands is ending subsidies and leveling the playing field. So the farm bill is really key to that. Or like, and this, you know, this is just to add a thought to that, like if you have a connection to or can get media coverage of like one of your local legislatures who maybe sits on one of those committees and will be voting on some of these issues, if you make your demands or part of your march or rally directly like calling on them to vote or to, you know, not support subsidies, that would be another good thing to address in your press releases.
A quick question. James mentioned Rocket Reach, and then the next one he said I couldn't pick up. It sounded like muckrack. I don't know what it was. James?
Yeah, muckrack. Amy put it in the chat. It's muckrack.
And we'll add those to the press guide as well.
Yeah, it's muckrack.com. And just the point on the politicians there, I think that's a good point as well, and just slightly off topic with the press releases, but it's I would suggest if you're not doing so already, like tweeting all like the politicians in your local area, inviting them to come to the march, and you know, some of them will show up, so that's also something I'd suggest doing.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, James, for this presentation and helping us all and everybody who attended. Obviously, we didn't get to chat much about general outreach or social media, so we will be doing a separate training for that. Also wanted to mention that we have a police liaison training that's coming up on Sunday, the 26th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's with Noah Bristol, who is fantastic activist, and he's done a lot of police liaison trainings and been a police liaison at countless different events. So it's going to be a really great opportunity for people that are not only interested in being a police liaison, but just are at events, because it's great knowledge for everybody to have. I also want to mention, I put in the chat again, our GoFundMe, if you could please share that around and start promoting that, because the big point of the GoFundMe is to support all the cities, making sure that you have the materials you need and a banner, and to support the larger cities that have more expenses. We also are looking for sponsors. I put the sponsorship packet link in there if you know of any organizations that might be interested, or if maybe your group would be interested in sponsoring. In addition, we're looking for some key volunteers to help with the overall vegan night or vegan Earth Day March, such as graphic designers. If anybody knows of a graphic designer or is a graphic designer, that would be wonderful. We're also looking for people to help with just getting the word out. There's a long list of different things, or if you don't see something on there that maybe you're interested in helping with, just let us know in that form as well. And then again, the next training is on Sunday, March 26th at 7 p.m. And then this training and all of our other trainings are recorded and then put on YouTube, and are also in the city organizers resource guide. So once you do sign the city organizer agreement, then Serena sends you a link to our resource guide, which is very, very detailed. We worked very hard on it. We've got guides for pretty much every aspect of the march that go to other guides. And again, there's a very detailed media guide that has links to, right now it has the initial template for the 5 to 6 week mark, and then we'll be adding more templates as we go. And I think that's it. Is there anything you wanted to add, Serena?
Just thank you everyone for being here, and reach out to us if you have any questions. Oh, and one other thing, we do actually have another training that is going to be in Spanish next week. So we're going to be covering stuff we've already covered, but with Spanish translators doing live translation. So if you know people who that would be really helpful for, look out for the details. We'll be creating a Facebook and event and details for that. That's not up yet, but that will actually be our next training. So
yeah, it'll probably be on Thursday. So
yes.
We're still finalizing everything, and then we'll get that out to everyone once that's set. All right, well, hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. Again, reach out to us with any questions, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.